Upon regaining consciousness in the med bay aboard the human vessel, the Athena, my initial sight was his visage. It was a face etched with ruggedness, yet imbued with kindness, and a warmth emanated from his cerulean eyes that I had never before encountered across any species, let alone these peculiar bipedal beings known as humans. Little did I comprehend then the profound impact that this human soldier, Lieutenant Connor Jensen, would have on the trajectory of my existence, altering it in ways beyond my wildest imaginings, especially after all others had relinquished all hope for me. However, I am prematurely recounting events. Let me commence from the very outset. My designation is Aera, and I served as a scout for the Delone Defense Forces, stationed at the remote, arid mining outpost of Pyros 5. Our primary directive was to safeguard the valuable mineral reserves from predatory raiders and competing factions. Yet, for a young combatant such as myself, it was largely an uneventful assignment in an isolated locale. This monotony persisted until the arrival of the Krill. The Krill were a ferociously violent insectoid species, characterized by sharp, angular forms and an utterly cold, unyielding malevolence. They launched their assault without forewarning, overwhelming the outpost's defenses and mercilessly eradicating all in their path. I witnessed, paralyzed by sheer terror, as they dismembered my comrades, their razor-sharp talons rending through protective plating and flesh with horrifying ease. Transfixed by dread, I could barely muster the strength to seize my projectile weapon and seek refuge behind some discarded mining apparatus. My hands trembled uncontrollably as I discharged rounds indiscriminately into the surging multitude of their bodies, each shot seemingly serving only to amplify their ferocity. I understood the futility of the situation. Their numbers were overwhelming, and I was merely a solitary, terrified combatant on the precipice of a brutal demise. A talon violently raked across my abdomen, and I succumbed, vibrant green ichor gushing from the laceration as my perception began to wane. In my fading vision, I thought I discerned unfamiliar craft descending from the heavens, unleashing fiery devastation upon the Krill. Then, all dissolved into darkness. I had presumed that to be my end, just another forgotten casualty in an indifferent cosmos. Yet, fate, it appears, harbored alternative intentions. I awoke with a sharp gasp, my instincts compelling me to reach for my injury, only to find it swathed in peculiar white bandages. My eyes struggled to adjust to the harsh luminescence, my vision blurring as I took in my new surroundings. Metallic gray walls, electronic devices emitting rhythmic beeps and erratic flashes of light, and a being utterly alien to me, leaning over me. "Easy now," it stated, its voice a deep yet reassuring tone. "You are secure. I am Lieutenant Jensen, though you may address me as Connor. You are aboard the UTS Athena." I attempted to articulate, but my mouth felt as parched as the driest desert. The being, Connor, extended a small cylindrical receptacle towards me. "Here, drink this. Slowly." The cool liquid soothed the dryness in my throat as I imbibed it in small drafts. Finally, I managed a raspy utterance. "Where am I? What transpired?" "We intercepted your distress signal and arrived to find the Krill swarming your outpost," Connor explained with measured patience. "I regret to inform you that few survived. But we did succeed in extracting you and a small number of others before dispatching those creatures." Survivors? My squad? A surge of profound sorrow washed over me as I recalled their agonizing fates, and yet, somehow, I had been spared, rescued by these unfamiliar beings. "Rest," Connor murmured, his hand gently resting upon my shoulder, a simple gesture that somehow assuaged my distress. "You are still recuperating from your wounds. The Athena possesses some of the finest medical facilities in the galaxy. We will have you back on your feet." I had countless more inquiries, but a profound weariness suddenly enveloped me. I managed a faint nod before surrendering to a dreamless slumber, feeling an inexplicable sense of security in the presence of this alien soldier, who radiated an aura of tranquility and compassion. Over the subsequent days, I remained confined to the medical bay, gradually regaining my strength. The human medical personnel treated my injury with technological advancements far surpassing anything I had ever conceived. Dermal regenerators, cellular enhancers, and nanosutures. For my people, an affliction of my severity would have been a death sentence, or at best, a permanent disability. Yet these humans spoke of restoring me to full combat readiness within mere weeks. I also gleaned more information regarding my rescuers and the vessel on which I was now a guest. The Athena was a united Terran starship, a component of the peacekeeping and humanitarian armada of the Galactic Concordance. Its crew was predominantly human, a comparatively nascent species on the interstellar stage, yet one rapidly earning renown for its sophisticated technology, unwavering courage, and a perplexing inclination to offer aid to those in peril, even at considerable personal cost. It was Lieutenant Connor Jensen with whom I engaged most frequently during my convalescence. He visited me daily, occasionally bringing sustenance, always ensuring its suitability for Delone physiology, and endeavoring to educate me about human customs. At other times, he would simply sit with me, attentively listening to my faltering attempts to articulate the essence of my homeworld, my family, my aspirations, and my deepest anxieties. I discovered that, much like myself, Connor was a soldier, a member of the Concordance Marines. However, he spoke of his deployments with a poignant blend of pride and melancholy, recounting the lives he and his fellow Marines had preserved while lamenting those they could not reach in time. He carried the weight of those losses, an emotional burden he seemed unable to shed. "Why do you do it?" I inquired of him one occasion. "Why hurl yourselves into the fray for others, for beings you've never encountered? Certainly not for accolades or riches." Connor contemplated the question for a protracted interval before offering his reply. "It seems to me that this is simply who we are, the human race. We came to understand long ago, after considerable suffering and loss on Earth, that we are all interconnected. We are more formidable when we act as one." He gestured outward into the vast emptiness. "Out here, in the void, we each have only each other. There exists too much despair, too much malice, and we must strive to be the beacon, even if it causes us pain. We must endeavor to do so. I found this notion so contrary to the practical, often brutal nature of my own species. To jeopardize one's life for an unknown entity seemed like sheer folly, a sign of weakness. Yet, I would not be standing here now, were it not for that very perceived weakness. As the days bled into weeks, my strength returned, and my bond with Connor deepened. He recounted tales of Earth, its majestic peaks, its boundless oceans, its skies painted with the soft hues of night. In return, I described Kez, my home moon, with its steamy jungles and sunsets that shimmered with violet light. We discussed notions of family, obligation, and one's calling. Connor's countenance would brighten considerably when he spoke of his daughter, Eliza, who awaited his return on the Mars colony. "It's for her and children like her that we undertake this work out here," he once confided. "To make the galaxy just a little more secure, a little more radiant, so that one day, perhaps, they may know genuine tranquility." Tranquility was not a concept I was intimately acquainted with. Existence was characterized by struggle, confrontation, and rivalry. The strong flourished, while the vulnerable perished. Such was the natural order. However, the more time I spent in the company of this human, the more I began to question if an alternative path might exist. Once my injuries had sufficiently mended, I was permitted to depart the medical bay, always under Connor's vigilant supervision. He guided me through the colossal vessel, from the hydroponic gardens where they cultivated fresh sustenance to the observation deck offering a panoramic vista of the cosmos, and the training chambers where crew members engaged in sparring and drills. I was astonished by the effortless camaraderie among the humans, their laughter and casual touches standing in stark contrast to the austere formality and reserve of Kesian military cadres. I also encountered other members of the Concordance aboard, a towering Velian engineer, an Orasan navigator with eyes like shimmering obsidian, and a pair of Orosian medics, all treated with the same deference and fellowship by the human crew, despite our evident dissimilarities. United in a shared objective, doubt still lingered within me. What was my purpose now? My unit was annihilated, my assignment obliterated. Once I had fully recovered, where would I go? What would I do? Could I truly return to Kez, to once again take up arms for a government entrenched in perpetual conflict, a society that showed no regard for the feeble and broken? I confessed these apprehensions to Connor one evening as we sat together amidst the gardens, the aroma of exotic blossoms perfuming the recycled atmosphere. I feel adrift, I admitted, my gaze fixed on my hands, which still bore faint scars from the assault. Directionless. You all saved me, tended to me, showed me kindness, the depth of which I still struggle to comprehend. How can I possibly repay this? How do I move forward? Connor remained silent for an extended period, his thoughtful nature evident in his eventual reply. He then took my hand in his, the warmth of his skin instantly a source of solace. You know, there are still hundreds on Pyros 5 suffering in the aftermath of the Krill attack, he began. Many are wounded, even more displaced. Their resources are decimated. They could benefit from our assistance. I looked up at him, surprised. You intend to go there, even after the attack? He nodded, his resolve unwavering. The Athena may be a vessel of war, but her primary mandate has always been humanitarian. We proceed where we are needed. And in this instance, he added, squeezing my hand, I believe you are needed too. I blinked at him, uncertain. Me? What contribution could I possibly offer? I am merely a single damaged soldier. Connor offered that gentle smile of his. You are also a survivor. Someone who comprehends their pain and loss. Someone with an innate understanding of their world and customs. You possess talents and strengths far beyond what you currently perceive. Come with me. Let's help to restore what has been broken. I gazed into his earnest eyes, witnessing the unadulterated faith shining within them, faith in me, a relative stranger, an alien. He had already granted me a second chance at life. Now he was offering me a purpose. A surge of unfamiliar emotion welled within my chest. I still did not fully grasp these humans, not completely, but I understood this one human, this infuriatingly benevolent male who had rescued me, cared for me, and now desired my companionship as he once again plunged headlong into peril. How could I possibly decline? Taking a deep inhalation, I nodded and returned his hand squeeze. Okay, I said softly. Let's go. Let's be the light. And so, a decision was made. A new course charted. One I could never have anticipated. The following day, Connor and I joined the expeditionary team bound for the surface of Pyros 5, prepared to confront whatever trials lay ahead. Together. The scene that greeted us on Pyros 5 was one of absolute devastation, far exceeding my grim expectations. Mangled mining equipment, scorched earth where the Athena's weaponry had annihilated krill formations, makeshift shelters crammed with the injured and displaced. Not a single structure remained standing. I stood frozen for a moment, overcome by the acrid stench of smoke and decay. But Connor was beside me, steadfast and resolute. Come on, he said calmly, slinging his medical kit over his shoulder and grasping a crate of supplies. There's work to be done. We proceeded towards the field hospital, the first established by the Concordance medical teams that had arrived ahead of us. Rows of cots held the wounded human technicians busily attending to them with dermal regenerators and hyposprays. I noticed a cluster of unattended Kezian survivors huddled in a corner and guided us in their direction. Their wary gazes widened as I approached, taking in my Kezian features, now overlaid with the unfamiliar Concordance fatigues I wore. Peace, I stated in Kezian Standard. I am Ira Zen, formerly of the 18th Scout Battalion. This human is a medic. We are here to assist. Why would the Terrans help us? One of them spat, a young male whom I recognized as a local miner. We are not their concern. We were barely a speck on their star charts before this. Others murmured agreement, their faces etched with pain and suspicion. Before I could respond, Connor crouched down to their level, opening his pack and proffering an iridescent vial. It was a potent Kezian painkiller. You are correct, he said evenly, his translation device rendering his words in perfect Kezian Standard. We are not here out of obligation or political maneuvering. We are here because you are suffering, and we possess the means to alleviate that suffering. That is the sole justification we require. The miner stared at him for a prolonged moment, assessing. Finally, he reached out to accept the vial, and Connor began gently rolling up the miner's tattered sleeve to treat his abrasions. The others watched tensely, some wincing in shared discomfort, but none recoiled when their turns arrived. And so it continued. We moved among the survivors, Connor providing swift and expert care, while I translated and offered solace with familiar phrases. Some we visited in their overcrowded tents, treating illness and dehydration caused by inadequate sanitation. Others we assisted in the somber task of burying their dead, offering quiet words of comfort as they lamented their grief beneath the violet skies. We coordinated the distribution of food and supplies from the Athena's cargo hold, ensuring the rations were familiar and palatable to Kesian tastes. Everywhere we went, I observed the initial distrust and resentment in my people's eyes gradually dissipate, replaced by tentative gratitude, even wonder, as they witnessed the tireless dedication of Connor and his fellow humans, expecting no recompense or commendation in return. It was a paradigm shift, a realization that compassion and unity could indeed be strengths in their own right. It was not always effortless. There were moments of frustration, of helplessness in the face of such profound loss. One dawn, after a sleepless night tending to a child's grievous burns, I found Connor on the periphery of the encampment, his head bowed and shoulders slumped with exhaustion. "Hey," I said softly, coming to stand beside him. "Are you all right?" He glanced over at me, managing a rueful smile. "Just thinking. Wishing we could have arrived sooner, that we could do more." I nodded slowly. Those same thoughts had plagued me as well. The Kesians prided themselves on their robust defenses, yet their outpost had fallen with such alarming speed. How many more might we have saved with the Terrans' advanced weaponry, their indomitable spirit? But wishes changed nothing. "We are doing everything we possibly can," I reminded him. "You taught me that. And look at what we have already accomplished here in mere days. My people are not quick to trust, but you have shown them a new way. Hope, where there was none before." Some of the tension eased from Connor's posture as he absorbed my words. "I suppose you're right," he conceded. "I guess I just can't help but feel the weight of it all sometimes. Eliza would probably tell me I'm being too hard on myself again." "She sounds wise," I commented. "You're Eliza," I teased lightly. "You should listen to her more." "Brat," he retorted with a chuckle, bumping his shoulder against mine. The casual contact sent a pleasant shiver up my spine. These moments with Connor, the easy banter and physical closeness, felt more authentic than anything I had previously experienced, as natural as breathing. We lapsed into comfortable silence for a while, watching Pyros 5's twin moons creep towards the horizon, the hushed murmur of the awakening camp behind us. Finally, Connor turned to face me fully, his expression unreadable. "What will you do when our work here is concluded?" he asked quietly. "Have you given any thought to that?" I hesitated, an icy tendril of uncertainty coiling in my gut. In truth, I had been deliberately avoiding that very question. The Athena and her crew had begun to feel like a home, and Connor had begun to feel like something else entirely. "I'm not sure," I admitted, detesting the faint tremor in my voice. "Return to Kez, I suppose. Make my report to command." But the words felt hollow. The prospect of leaving now was almost physically agonizing. Connor held my gaze, searching. For a breathless moment, I thought he might reach for me. But he simply nodded, looking back towards the horizon where the first sliver of sun was peeking through. "Well, you've more than proven yourself here," he said at last. "Proven your resilience, your adaptability, your compassion." He glanced at me sideways. "The Athena could use someone like you. The Concordance could, if that's something you might be interested in." I stared at him, my heart suddenly pounding against my ribs. Was he saying what I suspected? Offering me a place among his crew, a chance to continue what we had begun, not just here, but out there, in the swirling immensity of space? I thought of my unit, my former life, what it had been, and what it could never again be. Then I thought of the Athena, the sense of purpose and camaraderie I had found aboard, of the way Connor made me feel challenged and valued, seen in a manner I never had before. Perhaps this was more than just an assignment, more than duty or obligation. Perhaps this was the genesis of everything. I took a shaky breath and squared my shoulders, meeting Connor's gaze with a determined one of my own. "Yes, I said firmly. I want that. I want to stay on the Athena. With you. With the crew. The grin that spread across Connor's face was blinding, transformative. I felt an answering smile tug at my own lips, a giddy elation bubbling up from some hidden well within me. This was right. This was where I belonged. Well, all right then, Connor said, his voice brimming with barely suppressed delight. Let's make it official. He reached out to clasp my shoulder, the touch searing even through the layers of my uniform. Welcome aboard, Ira Zen, of the Galactic Concordance. The days that followed passed in a whirlwind of activity. The grueling work hardly seemed to matter anymore. I had a future now, one I had chosen for myself, one filled with promise and purpose. We concluded our relief efforts on Pyros 5. The survivors were now secure with provisions for the protracted process of rebuilding. I bid farewell to those I'd come to know, assuring them that the Athena would maintain contact, that they would not be forgotten. Upon returning to the ship, I was granted official quarters and commenced intensive training to integrate with the crew. Connor, predictably, took a leading role in my education, guiding me through prevailing customs and protocols, assisting me in refining my translation implant, and challenging me in combat exercises. When he learned of my scouting specializations, he never eased up on me. I may be new to your ways, I told him once, panting and sweat-streaked after a particularly grueling sparring session, but I'm no fragile flower. Connor laughed, reaching down to haul me to my feet. Noted, he said. Ira, I'll remember that next time you're cursing my name from the mats. As I found my footing among the Athena's diverse crew, I couldn't help but marvel at the effortless acceptance and respect I received, so different from the rigid hierarchy of Kesian units. Here, I was valued not merely for my skills, but for my unique perspective and experiences. The Velian engineer eagerly sought my opinions on modifying the ship's shielding to better withstand krill plasma blasts. Nara, the Arasan navigator, patiently explained the complexities of void fold calculations used for warp jumps, fascinated by the Kesian methods I had learned. And in the medbay, I shared my knowledge of Kesian physiology and field medicine with the Erosian doctors, in turn learning their advanced techniques. It was a dance of cultures and ideas, a synergy that only enriched us all. And through it all, Connor remained my anchor, my guide, and my most dedicated advocate. We fell into an easy rhythm, working and training together, sharing meals in the galley, and often ending our shifts stargazing on the observation deck, trading stories of our respective worlds. Sometimes he spoke of his daughter, and the wistful longing in his voice made my heart ache. I knew he missed her fiercely. She would love you, you know, he said one evening as we watched a vibrant nebula drift past the view screen. Eliza, she's fascinated by other species, always begging me for stories of our missions. He slanted me a smile. Meeting her very own Kesian warrior would probably make her whole year. I ducked my head, warmth flooding my cheeks at the thought. I would be honored to meet her someday, I murmured, if you think she wouldn't mind a visit from her father's alien partner. The words crackled on my tongue, daring and new. Connor stilled, his eyes widening a fraction. Partner, he echoed softly. Is that what we are? I swallowed hard, holding his gaze. Isn't it? Unless my feelings are one-sided. The mere thought made me want to curl in on myself like a withered leaf. No, Connor breathed, catching my hand and pulling me closer. Not one-sided. Never that. His other hand came up to cup my cheek, his rough palm infinitely gentle. He rested his forehead against mine, the gesture achingly intimate. Ira, you have become essential to me. I didn't expect this. Never thought I could feel this way again. But you make me want to try. My breath hitched, my pulse thundering in my ears. I reached up to brush my fingers wonderingly over the pale stubble along his jaw. Connor, I whispered, I want this too. Want you. Whatever comes. He made a rough sound, almost a growl, and then his lips were on mine, hot and insistent. I gasped into the kiss, my hands fisting in the front of his uniform as he hauled me flush against him. The taste of him was intoxicating, addictive. I lost myself to the heat of his mouth, the slide of his tongue against my own. Nothing had ever felt more right. We lost track of time, wrapped up in each other, trading lazy kisses and murmured words of affection. It was only the chirp of Connor's communicator that finally broke us apart, flushed and breathless. "Connor here," he answered, his voice still gravelly. "Lieutenant," came Captain Hal's clipped tones, "we've just received a distress call from a civilian transport near the Sen asteroid belt. Possible Krill Raider activity. I need you to assemble a tactical team for intercept and potential rescue operations." Connor and I locked eyes, adrenaline already humming through my veins. "Understood, Captain," he replied. "Arazen and I will be in the hangar in 10. Connor, out." As we hurried to gather our gear, I couldn't help the fierce grin stretching my face. This was who we were, Connor and I. Guardians, protectors, no matter the danger, no matter the odds. We would be the light in the darkness, the hope for the hopeless. Together, always, for as long as the stars burned bright. And I knew, with bone-deep certainty, that I had finally found my true path, my purpose, with this crew, with this remarkable human by my side. I was home.